great. Well, we're so glad you're here. And as you know, it's so wonderful to have such good friends, old and new, or new and longtime friends. So we're so thankful for all of you for being here. I just have to say that we consider it an honor to have the Sari A. Rosenbaum Fund for Women and Girls here, simply because knowing the history, and I don't know if you know the history of that fund, and if you knew Sari, you would know here's a force of nature who was about this tall and just had so much energy. And she gathered 60 of her friends, men and women, who started the fund 20 years ago. And if you can believe it, it's one of the larger funds that we have at the Community Foundation of Middlesex County. And we have granted and invested in the community in programs that support women and girls to empower themselves, almost $300,000 in grants through the wonderful nonprofits. And you'll hear about the New Horizons program that we've invested in. So it really is an honor. I was hoping that one of the founders would be here, and I hope she can jump on, but if Nancy Myers joins us, she's one of the founders, and a round of applause for those women 20 years ago who did that. Again, we're surrounded by good people. That's our motto. We only know good people who do great things, and you're all here. And some of them are out not joining us, but welcome. And there, I think you have some information about the logistics of the whole thing.
I do. Thank you. So as I said, for those that joined just a few minutes ago, feel free to ask questions as we go along. If you have one, you can use the chat box. You can use the reaction tab if you're on a Windows or Mac at the bottom, or tap on your reactions on your tablet. And then we'll definitely have time at the end for Q&A. This is set up as a roundtable Q&A. Alyssa and I have been brainstorming some questions and some topics to talk about as she talks through this. So thank you all for joining us. And Alyssa, thank you for being here. If you have not had a chance to meet her, and as I'm talking, Alyssa, I'm gonna spotlight you, so don't get panicked here when you jump up in the middle of your screen. There she is. So Alyssa is the director at the New Horizons Domestic Violence Shelter, which is a program at the Community Health Center. And she's originally from North Dakota. And we met last year when we partnered with New Horizons Domestic Violence Services and the Middletown Police Department to place a buddy bench in Harbor Park. And Alyssa came along to help us paint the bench purple in preparation for its placement. So, and fingers crossed, I've been told that bench is in storage while they renovate the park. So hopefully when the park renovations are done, we'll go back and find it again and get it back out there. So, and she was named director of New Horizons in November. So thanks for joining us, Alyssa. I'm glad you could be here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. It took me a minute to find my microphone, but here we are.
So I know some people know about New Horizons that are on today's program, but I think some people may not be as familiar with New Horizons in general in the background. So why don't you just sort of in a nutshell, give a little bit of the history of New Horizons?
Of course. So, as Thayer said, my tenure here is rather recent, but New Horizons itself has been around for over 40 years. We're actually in our 42nd year right now. And the origin story of it is pretty dramatic in a way, but really indicative of why these services are so important. The original story is that the original shelter space, an abuser found the location and burned the original building to the ground. And so there wasn't enough resources for the original team to kind of recoup and rebuild. And so they reached out to Mark Masali at the Community Health Center, which is also rather not super new, but much newer than it is now. And that was when that relationship with the Community Health Center was formed. And ever since, New Horizons has been serving women, girls, any victims of intimate partner violence throughout Middlesex County. We are, we have a wide range of services. We're much more than a shelter. Although we do operate a 24-hour shelter and office line, but we also offer court advocacy. We offer comprehensive case management and crisis counseling, not long-term counseling, but crisis counseling. And we also do preventative education. So that's the community education. That was actually my role previous to being the director, was to go out in the community, give presentations or kind of guided, structured conversations about intimate partner violence and what it means, and really, making sure, because one of the key things about preventing violence is people know what it is. You find that a lot of people don't necessarily even know what counts as abuse outside of kind of the stereotypical physical assault. So, and then we of course have child advocacy program. We have a housing program. We're really multifaceted in terms of what we offer the people of Middlesex County.
Well, I think actually you just made a really interesting statement, and I would like, I think everyone, I know I would, a little clarification. You said a lot of times people don't know what actually counts as abuse, other than the abuse, the physical abuse that we all think of. So what should people be aware of?
Oh, absolutely. So we kind of, to talk about it in commonplace, we kind of break it down into simple terms. So you have physical, like I just mentioned, pretty self-explanatory: assault, hitting, kicking, etc. But there's also emotional and verbal abuse. So put downs, name calling, manipulation, pressuring someone into doing something they don't want to do, or making it feel like it's their fault. You make me this way, this is your fault. I wouldn't do this if you would listen to me. Things like that put all of the blame on the other person. Sexual abuse, financial abuse is actually a really interesting one. I think, if you looked at it from kind of without knowing what it would look like, it would just kind of look like someone's making a lot of really bad financial decisions. But I remember when I first started New Horizons, there was a client who invested in a timeshare because her abuser coerced her to do so. And it wasn't like he was at the bank holding a gun to her head, literally. But it was very much like a pressure, like, you're the financial, you're the decider. This is something we need, and pressuring until she finally caved and signed on. And so from the outset, it looks like, why would you invest in a timeshare? You can't afford that. But it's one of those really tricky things where it just looks, it's something that is often used to control someone else in that way. And then another thing we're seeing a lot, especially with the pandemic, is technological abuse, which describes a couple of things. It describes the tools by which someone abuses someone, such as phones, GPS trackers, things like that, but also, kind of a constant messaging, like using constantly texting someone, constantly messaging someone, creating a fake profile online, pretending to be that person to ruin their reputation, creating fake photos or fake Photoshop to ruin that person's life, or even sharing real photos that could be compromising, but were shared, in a what was meant to be a trusted exchange. Really, it's honestly, when it comes to technological abuse, we're still kind of at the tip of the iceberg. We're still really trying to dig into the ways, like, as technology expands, like how abusers can use it to control other people. It's really, it's a fascinating yet scary topic.
Do you find, particularly with that, because I know with all types of, whether it's cyber stalking, cyber bullying, et cetera, that I think you're right. I think there's a definite tip of the iceberg sense about it as everyone tries to figure it out, like figure out exactly what it looks like. Have you been able to create good relationships with like local, whether it's social service providers or even law enforcement locally, to really brainstorm about what maybe they're seeing and how they can help interpret whether that qualifies as, you know, domestic violence, or at least enough to connect them, the victims, with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Our relationships with other service providers, emergency responders is what keeps us able to continue doing what we do. You know, we have a specialty at our office, but we routinely work with police departments in the county. We work with other like Department of Children and Families. We work with you know, a variety of like private mental health counselors, or even I mean, it's right there, the community health center. We work with different medical providers, behavioral health providers, all of these. The purpose being that all of these, you know, we often are a part of a team of people that is helping this person. You know, they might be receiving benefits from the state. They might already have a caseworker for that purpose. They might be working with DCF already. You know, they might come to us with, and if they don't already have all of those things, we often, a lot of the initial steps working with them, because whenever someone comes to us, we work with them to create an action plan to see, okay, what's your goal and where do you want to end up? And a lot of that goal would ultimately be, if they are eligible for benefits and don't get them, we would, excuse me, we would, sorry, everyone, one moment, everyone, sorry.
Nope. That's always what right when you least expect it. So while we are pausing, does anybody have a question that's popped up so far that they want to add to I've made a list of a couple of questions, but.
About there?
Yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you know, there's so much talk about social workers going out with police officers on calls.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, yeah, we'll definitely touch on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. I never a dull moment, right? That's one of the things is when the line comes in, we absolutely must answer it. And it appears I'm the only one in the office right now. But nonetheless, just to kind of say, you know, we often are a part of a larger team of people working with someone. So to kind of go back to that original question of, you know, how do you know, we work with people to figure out, you know, especially if it's a really tough case and we're not sure, like, what even, we might be able to identify something as abuse, but like we don't even know what protection that person might be able to have, right? Especially when it comes to technological abuse. So that's kind of how we work with other people.
And while you were taking the call, Jennifer Glick had commented, the other thing that we're seeing a lot lately is more and more communities finding ways to link social workers with law enforcement when they go out to certain types of calls or maybe to go and evaluate the call first, if it really does, if there's evidence that it really should have that more of an approach to responding to the call. Have you all been involved in that type of coordination or training, or a larger group as these conversations go forward, to how to go forward with that type of program?
Yeah, so we're very much in the beginning developmental stages of that conversation. There are some police departments, I don't believe in Middlesex County, but there are some police departments that are looking to start, actually, it's, I sit on the Shoreline Legislative Task Force, which includes like Guilford, Branford, and the lieutenant at Branford PD. They just received resources to start that process. Like they just hired someone who does that, who is a social worker that goes in response to calls. The police departments we work with haven't begun that, but we're definitely starting those conversations. So New Horizons, along with other member programs, are under the Connecticut Coalition to End Domestic Violence, or Against Domestic Violence. And they, at the larger level there's a few different task forces that are kind of addressing this question, and a couple of our team members were on that task force as well. And we are also looking into kind of post-certification, which, if you're not aware, it's the type of special state certification you need to train police officers in a variety of subjects, including domestic violence. So, we're having this definitely conversation that's starting, but I wouldn't be surprised if, even less than a year or two from now, we start seeing that approach much, much more. And I'm actually really excited by it. I think keeping that conversation open and allowing a different way to respond to it can actually really help the situation more than hurt it, and really make that experience much more, trauma informed is a term we use, like much more centered on that person and their experience of that moment than maybe it would otherwise be.
And I actually, while you were on the phone, I had said if anybody else had a question. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and throw this one out too.
Sure.
Gretchen had sent me a question in the chat. Approximately how many people is New Horizons serving annually?
So annually, this past year, we served almost 1,700 people. That is to say, though, that because of the pandemic, our services went up, but the year before that, it was about 1,500. So on average, we definitely surpass at least 1,200 annually. Usually, we are seeing our numbers increase more and more, like steadily the past few years, and part of that is absolutely the pandemic, and part of that is just, I'm hoping us really reaching out and making sure people know who, and feeling more, feeling safer to reach out to us.
I was wondering about that. I know you and I have had a number of conversations about the impacts of the pandemic in general on family situations and partner situations, but I have always hoped that if there is an increase, it's much more because people are feeling more and more that they can reach out for help, or their family or someone within their circle, their close circle, is helping them get help, rather than it just being an increase in incidences. So,
Yeah.
And rather more on a reach out. Speaking of COVID, you said you and I talked about the fact that there was an increase. We saw a lot of headlines about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I had not really thought about it until we talked about it, that the shelter in some respects, well, in one respect was full, the emergency shelter, but it wasn't always the safest place if people had to be there too long. But you created some very interesting different partnerships in the community with certain businesses that actually kicked in and sort of helped with the safety issue too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've always used hotels, but we really, really relied on local hotels during the pandemic. We ultimately had to, our shelter only has 10 beds already, and then we hotel whoever else needs that space. But we had to reduce that to, sometimes it was at most like 5 people, and that's including children, like that's including families. And so we needed to hotel all the other folks. And so we really ended up expanding which hotels we'd use within the county. Even like we've used hotels out in Manchester, or, like far out of our catchment area. Ultimately also with the goal to make the people we're working with have some sort, be able to remain in their support system. Maybe a sister's close by but can't take them on for whatever reason. So we really relied on hotels and working with them, and it's always a really important process to make sure that it's a staff member's name and not the client's name on the account, and calling in directly to the front desk as opposed to using the reservation system, and making sure that the staff at hand is very aware and sensitive to what that means whenever we call in for a reservation. So that's really something we've really increased during the pandemic as well, to offset that lack of shelter space for the health and safety of everyone. But we also really, we increased our use of ride shares and things like that, which maybe on its face, it's, is that really more sanitary, having someone go in a strange car with a stranger? But nonetheless, we weren't able, normally we have a van where we used to transport people, and we couldn't necessarily use that because it's in close quarters. So we worked a lot with rideshare companies and making sure we could get, more different ways to transport people at any given time. And that really, so we ended up using a lot of different services we hadn't used before. We went virtual in a lot of everyone has, but our support group and some of our and a lot of our client interactions ended up going online through Zoom or through encrypted messaging and WhatsApp and things like that. So we really had to get creative in terms of not only the businesses we were working with to provide these services, but also the way we communicate with our clients.
And that's what got our attention with the when you and I were talking about all of a sudden seeing an increase in the number of videos for the signals, because of the virtual chat, et cetera. And so we were talking about that, and it tied in with a service I think that I thought was really interesting that you provide, and that I think everyone is good for them to have in their own personal toolkit, is you actually will work with either a victim or with someone who's got a concern about a friend, of how you create that safety plan, of the keywords and the codes, or the whatever it takes, whether it's the front porch light on because it's never on, and that means come check on me. And really quickly, and I'll put it in the chat if anybody's interested, the Domestic Shelters organization posted this out last year in October, of encouraging everyone to use if you're in a situation or someone and you see a hand signal in virtual communications of someone at danger or at risk that needs help. And I was just scrolling down to make sure that I did it correctly. And it's, if you're on a video call with someone, if I can stand up or sit up straight enough here, and you see the thumb go down and then the hand come down like this. And the Canadian group that started it really has I need to go back and find that. I'll find that page again. Did a really good job of warning people, if you're in a virtual chat situation, don't start asking a lot of questions where everybody else can see it, chatting to everybody. But if you want to talk about what you do and how this ties in with what you do, I'm going to put this website in the chat for everybody.
Sure, absolutely. So one of the key things we do is as Thayer said, we safety plan, and that can mean a wide variety of things. It can mean, how are you safe tonight? Immediately right now, do you need medical attention? Do you need somewhere to sleep? It could be right then. We also have short-term safety plans, which means, maybe the person isn't necessarily ready to leave yet, but they're thinking about how to stay safe within their own homes. Or a long-term safety plan, which is, I'm ready to leave, and I want to invest the time and energy and resources it will take to do that. And so when it comes to what's really key about developing a safety plan is we already use the resources. A lot of times we use the resources clients already have or already know. Like, they may not realize they know, but they've already been surviving this violent situation for so long that they've developed their own codes and their own keywords and their own systems. And so instead of taking kind of a cookie cutter, this is what a safety plan looks like, and putting it on every single client, what is most effective and most trauma informed is an advocate will have that conversation with the client, being like, asking the questions, what do you do in this situation? What do you do if they draw a weapon on you? What have you done in the past if they threaten the children? Things like that, where it's like, what have you, and getting them to think through what are things you already know to do, and then let's expand on that. Let's add to that using our own knowledge of how to keep you safe. So in terms of like the hand signal, and this is an old one when you call into 911 and well, not old, it's still being used, but when you call into 911 and order a pizza, that's a classic. But a lot of times clients will come in with kind of their own language. I mean, some of them might not even call it abuse. So you have to kind of develop a lexicon with them. And so part of the safety plan is, one of the first things we ask is, can I say I'm from New Horizons? Can I say I'm an advocate? Like, can I say that? Or do I need to say I'm your doctor? Or do I need to say, hi, this is Sarah from tennis club or whatever, like am I, what, do I, when I call you, should I say what my affiliation is, or should I just kind of say, hey, it's Alyssa. I was just catching up from the other day. You left a notebook at my house. Can we meet to get it back to you? Like, that could be all code for, we have an appointment to meet to take you to the emergency shelter. But that's something you develop with the client. So when it comes to like codes and kind of this language, it's something you develop with that person, because they'll know what's best for them, and they'll know what's safest to say or not say when they're with the person that's hurting them.
I think that's the most important thing too, is coming up with different things that work within the situation. And you had mentioned this earlier, and I think it ties in with the numbers too. One of the things that you and I had talked about, particularly with seeing the rise in calls during COVID, and knowing that you partner with a lot of organizations and groups in our footprint, but I don't know how many people realize how big your footprint is. And I think sometimes, particularly, people think that maybe they come across you or see you at a meeting and it's more in the upper part of the county, upper part of our footprint, or maybe, it's on the edges, as if you're a member, if you participate in the Connecticut domestic against domestic violence organization. So where is your service area, Alyssa, where do you get calls from, should we say?
We get calls from all 15 towns in Middlesex County. We also get calls kind of in some surrounding area, like Madison, Waterbury, Meriden, which aren't our, like, other programs are responsible for, but because, as Middlesex County, it kind of, some parts of it in mid and lower county kind of bleed into each other. The shoreline is its own area, its own situation, which is divided between a few counties and therefore a few service providers. But we get calls from all sorts of areas. We are responsible at large for Middlesex County, so all 15 towns, all the way from Cromwell down to Old Saybrook and Clinton, and really, and should someone call in that isn't necessarily in our jurisdiction, if you will, we will still help them. Like, it's not a matter of, you actually live in Madison, I need to stop this phone call. Like, it's not like that at all. Like, we would absolutely work with them. We would ultimately, refer them to the program that oversees their area, but we also have that initial conversation with them. And maybe that initial conversation is, like I mentioned earlier, developing that lexicon. Maybe it's a safety plan we're working on together. Maybe it's an action plan, and we might remain in that client's life even if they work with another provider ultimately. And we actually have a few clients. Our reach kind of extends beyond state lines as well at times. We have clients who You know, we help escape to Florida, or we help who leave and go to other states. We have one client who lives in Indiana, but because of their court case regarding their children is in Connecticut, we still have a foothold in that case, and work as a go-between for their local services in Indiana and what we're doing here. And so really, we very, very technically speaking have, you know, catchment areas and these boundaries that we, you know, relatively adhere to, but our reach really, you know, it can go as large as it needs to go to provide services to the people that work with us.
How long does a client stay in contact, I guess? I mean, is it usually just through the end of a court case? Do you have those that stay in contact beyond? Do you have a really great, somebody came back and told us how well they were doing story you can share with us? Because it's a heavy topic. I have to, you know, I know that.
It always makes me feel, you know, even I've worked in different agencies in the domestic violence field before, but that's my favorite thing is when someone comes back and says how well they're doing, or shares a photo of them being happy with their family. You know, we really, how long someone stays with us completely depends on them. You know, we have kind of general guidelines in terms of, you know, for example, at the emergency shelter, our guideline is if you're a single adult, it's a 60-day stay. If you're a family, it's about a 90-day stay. Those are the guidelines, and we try to work with that person to make sure they transition relatively within that time frame, but it is certainly not a hard and fast rule. You know, it really depends on what that person needs from us and how long it will take to make sure they get every service they require. I saw Mary Ellen raised her hand. Mary Ellen, if you wanna share out.
Hi, Alyssa. I think we've met each other at some point along the way. Hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
So, you know, we're at St. Vincent's, we're practically neighbors. I'm dealing with two women in the last week. One is in our supportive housing service. One is not housed, living with an abuser. And I am very fearful for them. What we see on my end happening is male will either lure the person into their apartment, and it's usually around drug activity, and then start abusing them pretty badly and keeping them addicted. Another scenario I have right now is in my supportive housing. The woman allows men in to the point where I had to change locks for her today. And her judgment is off because she has an addiction issue, and they're basically prostituting. And the situation I had this afternoon with this guy, we don't know him, but he took in this woman, burned all of her clothes, burned her cell phone. She has the clothes on her back right now and came to us for help. And so I would like a closer relationship. This really disturbs me. I'm very strong around helping women that are being abused. And sometimes our women don't even recognize it as such. But it clearly is happening more than I'd like to see amongst my population. And it's not always as simple as they're ready to make a move. But, you know, and then you put the addiction on top of it and it colors everything. I am very fearful, a couple of women I'm working with right now, that they could turn up dead. And they're in that risky of a situation. And sometimes when they take them in and lure them to an apartment or get into their apartment, it's multiple men that are coming in, and they provide the sex, and then they get either a hit of heroin or coke or whatever as payment. And I had one situation, it was a Gilead client, badly beaten by one of my clients who I know very, very well, and most of you do because he panhandles, almost died to the edge of her life. Her life was saved. She went into rehab. She's back. She's back in business, back trafficking, back using. and matter of time before something bad's going to happen. So I'm looking for some more help. I know Valerie Smith very, very well.
Mhm.
Valerie worked here for many years, but I need some more help to link my case managers to you in your program, because we are housing people, so we tend to and keep offering these women to get back into substance abuse treatment, but that takes us more time. But I've got to get them out of these situations because they're going to turn up dead. It's pretty much that simple. This man I heard about today with these women is very violent, and she has the clothes on her back. That's what she came to us with today. And she's in the queue for supportive housing,
Sure.
but has nowhere to go. So that's what I'm looking for on the St. Vincent end of things, seeing we're such close proximity neighbors.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to connect after our talk here and kind of think about what we can strategize. So I think it is important to say, we actually we rely on you as well, because the advocates aren't necessarily trained to in terms of alcohol and substance uh, use. So we often if should someone need that service, the kind of advocacy mode might be, would could we support them somehow, even if it's whatever that means, to do a rehab program, or to kind of support temporary stay of some kind, to ensure that they're safe. And it sounds like, so I think just as you're saying, we really need to, your caseworkers need to connect with us. We certainly need to connect with you. So
Yeah.
I'm happy
And
to.
if I could say something to also, this is Robin Anderson, and one of the things I think, just listening to you, as you mentioned also that the person has a substance abuse issue as well, and so part of the Ministerial Health Fellowship we have recovery coach, and I believe she's on today, Robin Ross, and then we also and Gregory Winborn. And, so I think also, too, it would be great if we could kind of also find ways to really partner together, also in the community, and really figure out, sometimes, it comes through a different connection. So it could come from the person being connected to the recovery coach, or it could be, we have also case managers that are on the ground as well that kind of help link them to whatever services. But sometimes it's really them being able to really develop a relationship with someone that's in the community, and then from that relationship with that person, then it could be that we end up linking them to New Horizons or whatever. But just really, even I think as it relates to even working together around domestic violence and all of these other issues, is really the community being able to connect together and really utilize the resources that we have to make those connections, to help people make those connections.
Right.
Yeah, we're very siloed. Like, my case managers, I have two different kinds. I have the housing case managers. Their job is to keep people housed. And then I have a case manager that's boots on the ground at the soup kitchen. And so it's really, Robin, you're absolutely right. It's the fear these women have because they have nowhere to go. So if I give up this guy who's keeping me addicted and abusing me, I have nowhere to go. And for us to get someone in even supportive housing or the shelter, it's not easy. It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes these women don't have time. We also have a pretty good prostitution ring operating right across from Community Health Center. And they are young white women watching it. The police are trying to clamp down on it, but it's right under our nose. And it's not good.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that's what's so valuable about tonight, right? Like we make this connection and we can talk about it and figure out what, like Robin said, what's the best way we can work together, because a lot of our, we absolutely, well, we see a lot of clients who are experiencing homelessness, and it's not necessarily they are homeless because of intimate partner violence. They are homeless and experiencing intimate partner violence, or they are experiencing addiction and experiencing, like you mentioned, Mary Ellen, are experiencing this intense violence, but also that addiction colors their experience, like you said. And these are all things we really, in terms of providing the best advocacy, we make sure that a part of our comprehensive training is to understand that conceptually, and that informs how we communicate with them and informs what are the most likely, what are the best resources, right? The standard track, which there isn't really a standard track, right? Every case is different, but what would be an I don't even want to say appropriate, but what would be the best case scenario for this client, right? Like, what would be the best way to set them up for success? And really, like we're talking about here, it is really about these connections. We need to, be aware of each other and make sure that we can point people where they need to go. So, Mary Ellen, Robin, if you'd like to, I can put my, I think there might have my information, but I can put it in the chat as well, and then we can connect that way. Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah, I think that would be great to really kind of connect together and kind of figure out how we work together, and when those situations come up, how we can kind of, get involved with that, and, how we can approach it in different angles.
That'd be a great idea.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I think that's a great idea.
Robin Ross has a question for you, Alyssa.
Yeah, so my question is kind of sort of similar to what Mary Ellen was saying. I'm a recovery coach, and I work with a lot of people who are active in addiction. And I do have a young lady who's being abused on a daily basis by her partner. They're both homeless. And like I said, she's active in addiction. Do you deal with people who are active in addiction? Like, how does that work?
We do. But we do have a no drugs or alcohol policy in the shelter. But we do work with people in active addiction. We don't prohibit service for any reason. We just and that's what I kind of meant earlier about, and that again, I think that's talking through it together will really help set up this person for success, because should this person come to us, no, maybe they haven't had a recovery coach or any sort of that support, they come to us experiencing addiction, and we place them in shelter. If we find alcohol or drugs, we are in a place where we have to figure out, we would have to dismiss them, which I never want to do. I don't think that's setting someone up for the best outcome. And so, that would be the conversation to have. Like, Robin, if you referred this individual to us, that would be the conversation the advocate and yourself or whoever would have is, so this is the situation. How do we make sure their stay here results in the best outcome? And so that's again, we're relying on one another and really having those conversations and making sure the treatment plan is all about best outcomes and most success as possible. And then that collaboration is really key there. So that's how that would look. And even if we get if we get someone who I'm thinking recently we had a case where we did find alcohol in the individual's room and had to have that really hard conversation about what's next. We provided a safe location. We found they were transitioning next into a sober house, and we worked with the sober house they were going to transition into so that they could with the being that they were, and this individual really wanted to commit to that and had been relapsing some, as I'm preaching to the choir, but going through these relapses, and that sober house was willing to work with her and kind of like transition her out a little bit earlier, but then we would support from our end of that was our housing advocate who really, and Valerie, Mary Ellen, Valerie was the key star in that case, where she could transition this person to the sober house, support that process, and make sure they're still experiencing DV. There's still a client experiencing that. So are they getting their mental health resources? Are they getting their victim, crime victim compensation? All the things we can help them apply for and access, that's still on the table. Even if we have to find a different location for them to live, we would never exit anyone without a safe place to go. And we would, all of the other services we offer are always on the table. That's never stopped just because we have a technicality here. I mean, these are really hard cases. We don't want to, again, I keep saying we don't want to set someone up to fail. We really don't want to set someone up to fail. So that's why at the front end, if we get referrals or there's a situation like that, these are the conversations we absolutely have at the front end. And working with the client too, right? They know the stakes of what's going on with their case. And so respecting them in that way and making sure we have that conversation at the front end with their involvement and input is key. Sorry, everyone. Never a dull moment. I apologize.
Is that you?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay. Do you need to get it?
She does.
Okay.
Thayer, I think what could be emerging here is a new sort of hybrid model. There's not enough safe housing for women in our community. In sober houses, we don't have enough of. Usually they're run either by state-funded entities or ministerial groups that do it. I could probably fill up 2 houses right now of women that are really in need of both the mental health, the addiction help, and getting away from an abusive situation and starting over. So, it might be a new emerging thing you look at as a community,
Right.
To find someone to run a couple more houses or whatever. Supportive housing is tricky. It doesn't work for everyone, and it's not fast. It takes 120 days to even get smooth sailing. So, what I see in my ministry is the folks that are just in the vortex of what we're talking about. And they never get out, and then they die. And so that's what I'm really trying to, that and promoting men to treat women better. I have a mantra of that. So could be some things bubbling up here that as a foundation and as a community of partners, we look at a little differently. It's not hard to do.
And I think that's a really good point. I think that, as I was listening, to you asking the question and then Reverend Anderson jumping in and Robin Ross jumping in, and then, I'm thinking this is one of the things that we, Alyssa, is that your phone?
Yeah, I apologize.
Oh.
I'll let it go to voice.
Okay. It's up to you. You're more than welcome to jump on it. We know that you're there. That this is one of the things from a community foundation perspective that we really appreciate doing is, this is a great example too with a nonprofit that our Fund for Women and Girls has supported for years, and a mission that we believe and that fund believes in very strongly, but it's not one that provides an opportunity to do an in-person there site visit because we want to protect the residents. But for this purpose of this conversation and for Alyssa's organization, this might actually be a better way to do a site visit, because already we've made a connection among groups on the call or on this CFMC chat that are talking about the issues in a slightly different way that affect our community. So I would say already we've definitely begun to move the conversation up. So thank you so much, Mary Ellen, for jumping in with that.
I think there too, obviously St. Vincent's has a wide swath of religious organizations we work with. And I can tell you right now, there's several, including Reverend Anderson and others, who would jump on this kind of initiative because it's we're women in leadership, and it's a very important part. While domestic violence is not the mission of St. Vincent's, it's a very strong desire of mine to help our women as much as I can in a leadership position. So I do think there's a greater need, and we have a great provider community. We have lots of mental health, we have lots of substance abuse providers. Obviously we have supportive housing, but our funding strains us. in lots of ways. And so it's the nimbleness of a community foundation and partners around the table that can solve a sort of an emerging issue more nimbly and more, I don't want to say aggressively, but quicker. Our James Thomas, who we have the pilot going with the police department, is just phenomenal. And now the mayor is going before city council to wrap his salary, which the downtown business community has paid for to date, into an annualized salary for him to work 12 months on the street, Thursdays to Sundays. He's making a tremendous, he can tell you every issue in person we're having on Main Street. So that is part of sort of the new community policing model, social work. I call him a street minister, but we've been doing it now almost 6 months, 5 months. And his success rate is huge, not only for the business community. He's gotten people jobs. He's gotten people into treatment. He's picked up people down at Harbor Park who are homeless. So, he's really, that's the kind of thing that for $12,000, $15,000, it's made a huge community impact, and it wasn't done by state or federal funding.
Right. Wonderful. All right. So we usually try to keep these to about an hour from people joining us, and we do the welcome to finishing up. We know everybody's really busy, and but I want to make sure that if there are any last burning questions that someone really wants to ask right now, please raise your hand or wave frantically, unmute yourself. If you have any follow-up, feel free to send them, and we're happy to share them with Alyssa and then compile some responses and send it back out. As you know from the announcement, we do record these because we post the conversation. There are a lot of people. I got 2 emails while we were doing this from people who'd signed up and things went haywire for them. And so they're looking forward to being able to at least hear the conversation. So feel free to send any questions and we can get those to Alyssa for follow-up. And thank you, Alyssa, for offering to share your information. I did put it in the chat. So those that are maybe with organizations and see this as a new opportunity to connect some new dots and get some new conversations going about how to support our community, then please feel free to reach out to her directly. So.
There are 2 things. One, Nancy, I'm so glad you're here, and we are so proud that you are a founder of the Fund for Women and Girls. So thank you for your continued support and for your leadership in getting this whole thing started 20 years ago.
Oh, well, thank you, Cynthia. I was at a hospice training, so I had to, that's why I was late.
We only know good people who do good things, and you're all so busy. And the other thing, if you don't mind, and Kitty, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you at High Hopes have a wonderful program, and I think you're still doing it with Safe Futures, which is a similar program over in New London County. So as things evolve, if it's possible to just think about the program that you're doing there with the therapeutic writing, et cetera. So let's keep that in the back of our mind too.
Yes, I've already started in an email to Alyssa.
Good. Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
That's excellent.
This was very, very good. Thank you, everybody. It was great to hear.
Absolutely. And before we sign off, I would be remiss to neglect to say, part of our success in these past few years have absolutely been the support of the Community Foundation. The most recent Women and Girls Fund paid for us to be able to replace all of our kitchen appliances in both floors of our shelter, which really makes, it's a simple act, but it really makes a huge difference in terms of creating a really safe, welcoming, and warm environment for the people that do live here, especially right now in the context of this pandemic. So I really just wanted to make sure that we properly expressed our thanks to the Community Foundation.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. I have to say, I look back periodically, and particularly for Alyssa, since she's new, and this is one of the I think the longest series of grants from the Fund for Women and Girls, and it's definitely an issue that was near and dear and important in the hearts of all of those that were originally getting together to establish the Fund for Women and Girls. It's always been a topic. that we all agree needs to see more of the light of day in education, and so that we can find ways to bring it to an end. Not that we ever want to see you struggle, Alyssa, but if we can help bring this issue to an end and find something else for you to put all of your energies forward, wouldn't that make us all really happy? But
That's
really,
right. We want to put you out of business. That's
Yeah,
the goal.
right.
If we put you out of business, then you all can go and find something else to conquer.
so, but
Mine is retirement.
I was just gonna say, I can take an early retirement, go
There
to
you go.
Tahiti or something like that.
No, we need your brain power and energy, but thank you all.
Yes.
My goodness.
Thank you. It's
So-
good to see everybody.
Good to see you, Mary Ellen.
Thank
Take
you all
care.
for joining us tonight, and we will keep you updated on the next in our CFMC chat series. So
Great.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.